Well, hey guys, I am so happy to have you here because I am talking about an amazing new game that is coming to Kickstarter, Gunsword. What could it be about? All right, so I'm new to YouTube as a video game reviewer, but I am a sucker for fighting card games, especially person versus person. I cut my teeth way back in the 90s on a little game called Disc Wars that Fantasy Flight Games did, moved from there to Magic, and from there to all different kinds. Basically, anything that involves violence, I tend to like when it comes to board games. So, Euro games, worker placement, no. Fighting things with swords and shooting them, yes. Well, I'm happy to report that this has it and in spades. Now, there are lots of games like this out there, whether it's BattleCon or Yashima or some newer ones coming like Evian. So, what makes this game distinct? What makes this one special and worth adding to your collection? All right, the first and most important thing is the resource management system. Your momentum and the turn control shenanigans you can get up to are fantastic because in the game, it's your turn until your momentum gets lower than your opponent's. Then they immediately take control. But you can pass too, even if you have more momentum, which then forces them to take a turn, and then you get to do a bigger combo. But then again, they can pass too and do a reset, and you both end up right back in the middle, and then you have to go again. So there's some tricky things you can do there, setting yourself up for big swings, controlling their pace. One of the characters in particular, if you like control, Thane, is unbelievably obnoxious when he's played right because he will just control you and he'll make sure that you only ever get one little attack off and then he's going to be back to poking you. It's what he does. But if that's not your thing, that's okay because you can use Gunsword, who shoots him from all the way across the arena with a gun and pesters him with a hawk, which I'll show you Gunsword in a game demo video. So that momentum system, nothing else like it. It makes the game feel very exciting because you don't know when your next turn is going to be exactly, and then you're trying to figure out what the best way you can do and where you should end up and how you can manipulate the other person's placement and trick them so that you can unload on them with one of your big attacks. So the momentum system is spectacular. I've not seen anything like it, and I think I've played just about all of these fighting games. The next thing is that the movement itself is very dynamic. So one of the big criticisms of Yashima, for example, was characters didn't really need to move all that much. I mean, you might move a space here, a space there. With this, just about every card is going to move you some. There's some shooting cards that don't, but for the most part, you're going to be dashing all over that arena. And so it makes it feel like a Soul Calibur fight. I was a sucker for Soul Calibur back in the video game days. And I love that feeling, the anime fight-esque feel of ridiculous, fantastic, impossible weapons, and of course, most importantly, beating on your opponent with them. And this just has that in spades. But the other thing that I think is really particularly fantastic about this game is how accessible it is. Because the problem with a lot of these games is they are, I call them lifestyle games. You aren't just going to play it occasionally. To really get the depth out of it, you have to play it a lot. So that's games like Magic or like Evian, which, by the way, I pre-ordered and I'm very excited about. But finding someone to play those kind of games with, well, except for Magic because it's very popular, can be really hard because they require you to sit down, really learn the system, really get the in-depth nature of it and build your own deck. And then it all changes, in a couple months when the next expansion comes out anyway. Fantasy Flight Games and pretty much all of their expandable card games, and even X-Wing, have gotten that way to where unless you're really devoted to it or you happen to be lucky enough to have a particular style of group, which I don't have, you're going to have a hard time with those games because they require so much from you. And it's not to say that this game doesn't have depth, but it's much more accessible. You pick your duelist and you pick your weapon. Mix them together and there's no limits. And if you just want to use the duelist and their favorite weapon, you will be competitive. It's not like, oh, well, if you don't use this weapon with this character, you're crazy. No, they're really good. I've done some cross-test matchups, and that's something else I should probably mention. So I was a huge fan of this game back when it first came to Kickstarter under a different name back in 2016, and I was just very, very sad when it didn't fund. But because of my rather enthusiastic print and play review I wrote for them, they asked me to be a play tester. So I've been able to engage with them and do a lot of play testing with this game. So I can really vouch for the characters in this core set. They are balanced against each other. I've got the numbers behind it. I've been sitting here, I've been playing it, and it is a taut, tense game, and where every character really does feel distinctive, because that is one of my pet peeves. Don't tell me these characters are different when I sit down and I go, well, this feels exactly the same. You just jiggered the numbers a little bit. No, with this one, every single character is radically different, feels utterly fun, and so far, I've liked them all. I'm definitely better at some of them, and Thane in particular for me is really hard. I am not a control player. I like to smash things, so if you're thinking magic, red and black, man. Red and black. Burn things and kill them. With Thane, you want to control things, you want to manipulate things, and you've got to remember to do these kind of funky things with him, just planning in your own head, mind you. And all that complexity's up here, not in the cards. And so in addition to it being accessible in terms of what you have to know, pick a guy and pick a weapon that you want to use, mix and go, the cards themselves are very easy to understand, very easy to follow, and all the abilities just make plain sense. And I'm really hoping they continue with that as I hope they get funded and make many, many expansions. This game is accessible. There's no timing weirdness, so whether it's X-Wing or Magic or some of FFG's even more complex timing chart style games where you have to get into the complex PDF rules and they have an entire chart of when you can do this and when this happens. None of that here. You make an attack, I get a chance to respond, then you get a chance to respond to my response. Blocking, done. That's it. Really, really quite simple, very doable, which for me makes more fun, because what I really want to do with these games is have fun. And this has that. Let's go ahead and show you a few rounds with two of my favorite characters, Holan and Ganzeric.